You know that feeling when your stomach just drops, right? That instant, icy plunge of, oh my God, this is actually happening, even though you wish it wasn't? That was me, standing in my own driveway, coffee going cold in my hand, staring at the kind of scratch you don't just buff out. A deep, angry line carved right down the side of my SUV, bright silver against black paint, like someone took a knife to my week and left a signature you couldn't miss. And yeah, I've had a fender bender, a random door ding at the grocery store. But this wasn't accidental. This was personal. At first, I tried to tell myself it was some random jerk passing through, but even as I was thinking it, I could feel eyes on me. Neighbors pausing in their yards, glancing at me. That little hum of whispers carrying across the street. And then I heard it, clear as a bell, drifting over the hedge. Karen's kid did it. If you've ever lived anywhere with an HOA, you probably just groaned out loud. You know the type. Every neighborhood's got a Karen. Ours was something else. Mid-50s, president of the board since forever, clipboard welded to her hand, stalking the sidewalks like she was guarding Fort Knox, giving out fines for grass that's a half-inch too long or a trash can out at the wrong time. But her son, Jake? That kid was a whole other headache. 19, loud, never seen working, music always rattling his windows, parking wherever he pleased because he knew his mom would back him up. But keying my car? That was a step further. And just when I started to boil over, a neighbor jogged over with his phone, eyes wide, saying, "You gotta see this." Turns out his doorbell camera caught the whole thing. Jake, in his usual red hoodie, big dumb grin, trailing his key along my SUV like it was some kind of sport. I watched it twice, just to be sure. And then I did what anyone would do. I marched right up to Karen's front porch, ready to settle it face to face. She opened the door with that same too bright smile. The one that always made you feel like you were about to be told off for something you didn't even know you did. I didn't bother with small talk. Just held out my phone. "Your son vandalized my car. I've got the video." She glanced at the footage, didn't even flinch, just sighed in that patronizing way and said, "Jake was enforcing HOA standards. Your car was parked in a non-designated area all week. Maybe now you'll start following the rules." I swear, my jaw actually dropped. "You're calling vandalism enforcement now?" She just shrugged, said, "Actions have consequences," and tried to close the door. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just letting him get away with it. She was egging him on. And honestly, that was the last straw. Because people like Karen, they think being in charge means they're untouchable. They think the rules are there for everyone but them. So I decided I wasn't just going to fix my car. I was going to fix the whole damn problem. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, watching that video of Jake over and over, feeling the sting of every scratch, but also something else. A slow, stubborn determination building up. I'd read those bylaws before, but that night, I pored over them like they were the Rosetta Stone. Found a clause that let any homeowner call a board meeting if they'd been the subject of enforcement action. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office, a beige little box at the edge of our neighborhood, walls plastered with cheerful flyers about community spirit and lawn harmony, all approved by Karen, of course. She was there, perched behind the desk, already defensive. "If you're here to file a complaint," she started, but I cut her off. "I'm requesting a board meeting. Section 4, paragraph 3. She actually blinked, just once, but I saw it. She wasn't used to someone knowing the rules better than she did. By the time the meeting rolled around, word had spread. Neighbors showed up in droves, some just curious, some openly rooting for a showdown. When I played that video on the big screen, the silence in the room was almost funny. Everyone could see what Karen had tried to brush under the rug. Someone muttered, "That's a crime," and another whispered, "Isn't that illegal?" Karen tried to wave it away, saying Jake was just addressing violations, but I pressed her. "Show me where it says vandalism is an approved enforcement method." Nothing. Not even her usual cronies could back her up. And then something wild happened. Linda, this quiet retired teacher who'd been on the board for years but never said much, spoke up. "Karen, I think you've taken things too far." That was the first crack in the armor. Afterward, Linda found me by the coffee urn and whispered, "You should check the HOA's expenses. Karen's been signing off on a lot of things that never happened. Landscaping, security upgrades, it's all in the records." I wasn't sure what to think until I started digging. And man, once I started, I couldn't stop. All those invoices for repairs and maintenance were smoke and mirrors. Payments to companies nobody had ever seen, checks written to JK Community Services, and yeah, those initials stood for Jake and Karen. It all fit, like a puzzle you wish you'd never opened. So I made copies, printed everything, loaded the smoking guns onto a little USB drive. When the next meeting rolled around, I showed up early, feeling that weird, electric mix of nerves and adrenaline. Karen strutted in with Jake right behind her, both looking untouchable, at least until I stood up and started clicking through the evidence, line by line. Let's talk about these payments to JK Community Services, I said. Want to explain why the HOA's money is going to your son's shell company? You could have heard a pin drop. Karen went red, then white, then back to red. Jake looked like he was about to say something smart, but I cut him off. I've already sent all this to the county fraud division. They'll be looking into it. And just like that, the whole mood in the room changed. Neighbors started whispering. People took out their phones. Linda nodded at me like, told you so. Karen lost it, started shouting about privacy and how I had no right to see the records. But Linda backed me up. Homeowners are entitled to see every penny spent. If this is true, we've been robbed. The crowd murmured. Jake stepped up, tried to play tough, shoved me, knocked over the projector. For a second it looked like things were going to get ugly, until Linda yelled, "I'm calling the police." And boy, did that light a fire. Officers showed up in minutes. Karen tried to talk circles around them, waving her hands and claiming harassment, but I just handed over the paperwork and the video. The cops barely blinked. One turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, we'll need you and your son to come with us for questioning." Jake tried to swagger, saying it was all HOA business, but the officer just shook his head. Keying cars isn't part of your job description. Watching them get let out, Karen still shouting, Jake scowling. I won't pretend it wasn't satisfying. The whole neighborhood stood there, blinking in the afterglow, trying to process what just happened. A few days later, it was official. Karen, charged with embezzlement. Jake, vandalism and assault. The next HOA meeting, our first without her, felt like a new world. Linda got voted in as president, and somehow I wound up as vice. When I pulled into my driveway that night, the air felt lighter, the street a little quieter, my SUV finally repaired and shining under the porch light. No new scratches, no Karen, just peace. At least for now. But here's the thing. These kinds of power games, they never really end, do they? There's always someone itching for control, some little empire to build, some neighbor with a grudge. And it makes you wonder, are HOAs about community or control, justice, or just who can shout the loudest? I'd love to hear your take. If you were in my shoes, would you have fought back or just let it go? Drop a comment, tell me your own wild HOA story. Hit that like if you want more neighborhood drama, and don't forget to subscribe. Because trust me, there's always another Karen around the corner.